Hi everybody, today I am demoing a glow-in-the-dark ghost decoration for Halloween. The idea is that the mouth is a spinner with pins going into the outer shape, and then the eyes are also spinners. And what you could do with this in the printing process is to do a 50-50 kind of thing. So what I was thinking is glow-in-the-dark blue and glow-in-the-dark green. And that means that when the pieces here spin, you'll be able to see both colors, or you could switch them back and forth, which I think sounds pretty cool. So I'm going to start from scratch. And this does overlap a little bit with the gyro sculpture from last week. So you might want to review that one too. Okay. So let's start with the head of the ghost. I'm going to use a round roof shape, and I'm going to use the F key to zoom in, and that's a little too close, so I'm backing up. All right, minus 90. I'm using that snap rotation along the inside. I hit D as in dog to jump to the surface whenever I'm not on the surface, either below or above. And let's just flatten it out. I don't know, 10 is fine. I think we're going to readjust this later. And then how about the body of the ghost? Well, let's keep it simple. Just use a box down to the same size, or down the same height. And I'm just going to move that in until it is about right. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it does have to be overlapping slightly. Very good. For the bottom, there's probably different things you could do, but I think the quickest way is to use the scribble shape. So it brings up this menu, and don't really worry about the scale at this point. Ooh, can I do this with a touchpad? All right, it's a little sloppy, but that's fine. I'm just making a shape that I'm going to stick onto the bottom, and I want to fill it in. Sorry, this is taking so long. Okay. So I think I've filled it in. Oh, almost. There it is. And let me just kind of round out these sides with a few clicks. That's fine. Great, so now I'm done. It doesn't really matter if the top is rough because it's just going to be overlapped with this. I guess it doesn't really matter if I hold the shift key or not. This is already a pretty weird looking thing. And I'm hitting F to zoom in. I just want it to basically overlap. Maybe I'll stretch it a little more. That's good. So now that I have these three elements all together, I'm going to select all three at the same time, group, and I should have a solid looking ghost type shape. So now let's think about the size. I want to max this out on the printer, which means I can go 10 inches or 200 millimeters this way. Oh, and I don't really need to hold shift this time because warping doesn't really matter. So I'm going to stretch it this way, closer to 200. Maybe I'll recenter that. So now we're ready to start cutting everything out. So I'm going to use cylinder shapes for the eyes and the mouth. And let me just, I just grabbed one of those hole-shaped cylinders. So I'm going to use F to zoom in, and usually that's just a little too much. So I Okay, and so in this case, I do want to hold the shift key because I want a perfect circle. If I don't do that, or if I don't enter the same number in these two spots, then it will not be a perfect circle. Cool, copy and paste, put the other eye on the other side. I guess it doesn't matter too much if the holes are not centered absolutely perfectly. In fact, you might want to make it off center on purpose. How about that? Okay, and then copy and paste one more time. This one's going to be the mouth. And I'm using the arrow keys here. Okay, that looks good. And I'm just going to stretch it this way. Cool. How about this as a time-saving thing? Here's a nice trick. Look at this from the side, and then I'm going to drag a box just over those top three things. So I have three shapes selected, not the blue part. Copy and paste. Put them off to the side. And change them all to a solid. So those are going to be the inside pieces that we work with. Now I'm going to group all of this together. I have four shapes. Group it, and now the holes should cut out. Very nice. So what I have here is a thing that is 10 millimeters tall. Let's stick with that. 10 is a nice, I would call it a thick surface. 1 or 2 would be the absolute minimum. And yeah, that's fine. So first thing is to get all these down to 10. And I'm just going to move it over here. Well, you know what? Let me leave it off to the side. There are a couple more things. Right. And I can actually just get both of these together, and I'm going to lower these down to 10. Could have done this in that copy and paste stage. Okay. Great. Now, we want the spinner inside the hole to be smaller. You know, it can't be the same size, or you'd have to jam it in there and it would never be able to move. So let me do this. All right, F to fit. And then let me just click on here. I've got 61 by 40. Cool. Let me cut each one by 4. So I've got 57 by 36. Why 4? Because that gives me a gap of 2 millimeters all the way around. And I think that's a nice gap. So I'm going to put that in there and just kind of double check. And yeah, it looks like I have a nice gap all the way around. And then let me do the same thing with the eyes. In fact, I'm going to delete one of these eyes, so I only have to make the adjustment once, and then I'll copy and paste it. All right, so I've got 40 by 40. I'm just going to do a single click on the side. And let me cut it by 4 so that it gives me exactly a 2 millimeter gap all the way around. And actually, I'm gonna wait until I put the pins on to even copy this, since it's going to be the same in both. And again, I can just kind of double check that, yeah, it looks like it sits right in there with a nice gap all the way around. And I think that should spin just fine. Okay, so let me pull these back out, and we're going to put the pins on the side. There are different things that'll work for a pin. Last time you saw me use the paraboloid shape. This time I'm going to use the cone shape. So let's start with this one. I'm going to hit F. I'm going to start by rotating. And I'm going to shrink using the shift key down to exactly 10. 10 by 10. Okay, lining this up, I'm just going to hit F again. And you really want this to be perfect. You want it to be exactly centered right on that ridge, right in the middle. And And I think that's good. You really also have to make sure there's nothing sticking out on the side. It has to completely overlap. If you have to back it up a little farther in, that should work fine. So my first step, I like to work with these 2 at a time. I think that's easier. So I'm going to copy and paste. I'm going to hit the mirror button, which is also the M key. There are 3 different ways I could mirror it. Make sure you pick the right way. And then I hit this again to get all my regular controls back. And let me just line this one up on, oh, I think I hit the bullseye there. Yeah, I think that's lined up. Very good. So let me see, what do we do here? I'm going to select this one, and holding the Shift key, I select this one. So now I have 2 shapes selected. I do not have the orange thing selected, just the purple things. And I'm going to copy and paste, and there they are. Great. So let me change these into holes now. I'm going to move them over to the larger shape, and I can hit F again. And again, this also needs to be very well centered. We have to be very careful about this. And it'll help if, yeah, you got to really finagle the camera around. You got to really make sure that you have it centered on those panels there. And I think I do now. So I'm going to click off to the side. Then I'm going to grab each one separately and kind of move it into the wall. Make sure that you can see the entire round part sticking out. You don't want that to be covered at all. I think that's good. Yeah, that should be fine. Great. And then now I want to select these again. You might have to hit this little edge, this little, yep, I got it there. And then I'm going to hold Shift and grab this one. Did I get it? Yay, I got both. All right. Now I have both selected together. Copy and paste. So the spacing should be the same. I just have to get it centered right. Over here. Yep, I believe that's centered. Looks pretty good. Now, one more time, copy and paste both of them. Move it down to the mouth. View that. Okay, so I guess I just need to line up one of the sides. In fact, it would be good to just, yep, that works for that side. Clicking off on the work plane. Then I click on just this side, and I'm going to use my arrow keys. I would prefer not to use the mouse at this point because I want it to move exactly over in the horizontal direction. There we are. So what I should have is 6 hole shapes on here, and we're ready to cut them all out. Select just all those parts, group them, and then double check. Does it look like you actually have the holes cut out exactly in the middle? That one looks fine. You can move this around if it helps. Yep, these look fine also. Looks like it is centered pretty well. So now we just need to finish this part up. Let me go back over here and F to zoom in. And then I zoom out a little. So I will select purple thing, and holding the Shift key, I select the purple thing over here. Copy and paste. And I'm going to move these into position down on this one. Yeah, actually, I think I'm going to have to line these up separately, because once it Once it's on the inside of another shape, it's going to be hard to select. So let me just get these roughly into place, and then I will zoom in to make fine adjustments. All right, so I hit F. Hey, did I hit the bullseye the first time? Nope, sticking out on the side. Got to back it up a little more. And the other one. Oh, that's pretty good. Very good. So obviously that original one I showed you had some slightly different details, and you can imagine any number of different details you could put into this. But we're basically done. I'm going to group these three things, and yeah, I'm going to select them and group them, select these three things and group them. And now that I'm ready to put them in place, I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste the eye, so I have two. I would wait until the very end to copy and paste if you can. Okay, so I'm just going to grab these and put them roughly in place, and then I'm going to zoom in again on each one and try to get it perfect. I think that looks great. So, is it perfect? I think we're pretty close. I'm going to go ahead and change the snap grid down to 0.5. There it is. That looks perfectly centered to me. Great. Let's do this one. Hit F to zoom in. I definitely need to recenter that. And you can lower the grid as low as you need to, but I think 0.5 should do it in my case here. That looks pretty well centered, and I'm going to click this one. Definitely need to recenter that. Is that it? Just move that camera around. Make sure that the pins are not actually stuck to the solid. These pieces need to be separate from each other, no touching parts. Very cool. Now the very last thing I'm going to do is just to put a little tube shape on the top so we can hang this by a string. And I could either export everything in the design, selected 5 shapes. There's different ways to do that. I'll just group it all together so that there's only one shape now. And then once again, when we're printing, we can do different colors on the top and bottom. That would both be visible when the thing is spinning, so I would export and hit the STL button to download it.